Officers and deputies, ever put an unsuspecting butthole in his place while off duty? I went on a field trip with my children to the pumpkin farm a few years back, which included my 2-year-old daughter. It was all mommies and one other guy beside me. I gravitated towards him and we started chatting. We all got on the local public bus to go to the pumpkin farm. The driver of the bus was insane. He drove about 20 miles per hour over the speed limit, ran 2 red lights, and ended up slamming on the brakes to avoid an accident on the second red light, launching my daughter into the back of the seat in front of her. She was alright, but cried hysterically. When we stopped, I had one of the mommies get off with my kids and went up to the driver and started ripping into him. I was ready to fight, I was so pee. I suddenly hear a calm voice from behind me say, "I'll handle this," and turn around to the other dad holding a badge. He then asks the driver for his driver's license. Turns out that other dad was a highway patrolman. The driver was terminated. My dad was driving his undercover car one day, and this guy comes weaving down the lane doing about 30 over the speed limit. He finally gets right next to my dad, who gets right behind the car that was the next lane over, so that this guy can't pass. The guy starts going ape crap. He's flipping out, giving my dad the finger, yada yada, and finally swerves at him. My dad just laughs, flips on the lights and siren. He said as the guy pulled over he could literally see him banging his head into the steering wheel. This was in the newspaper in Windsor, Ontario recently. Off-duty cop saw a kid going car to car checking for unlocked cars. The cop reclined his chair so he wasn't visible. Kid opens undercover cop's car, promptly gets arrested. I get arrested for this all the time in GTA 4. My dad's friend's sister used to be an FBI agent. She had this one story, although I think it's more a story of idiocity than putting somebody in their place. So there was a bank. One day some guy walked in with a note asking for money. Typical robbery. However, when the teller started reading it, she started laughing. This moron decided to rob a bank that was next to an FBI building. Of course, all the agents did their banking there, and there was always at least 5 or 6 agents in there at any one time. From the way she tells it, as one agent was arresting the guy, there was a train of 10 or so agents walking by showing their badges. The building next to the bank has a big butt sign saying Federal Bureau of Investigation. Haha, what a weird name. I'd abbreviate that. Oh, well, time to rob this bee. Before college, I moved around a lot due to my dad being an FBI agent. At this particular time, my family and I lived in Las Vegas, and let's just say my dad was a very high-level exec at the office there. This is a man in his 50s who is far beyond his field work days, but always insists on carrying his secondary. One day he's just getting some gas at a gas station when he sees a very excited woman come out of the convenience store. She had apparently just hit the jackpot at the gas station slots. Yes, they are everywhere in Las Vegas. The woman enters the bathroom around the side of the building, and after a little while my dad hears screaming and struggling. He rushes around to see what's happening and catches a man running out of the women's bathroom. My dad immediately draws his weapon from his ankle holster, yells "Stop, FBI," gets the guy on the ground with his hands on his head, then cuffs and arrests him. The man was indeed robbing the woman of her winnings, and got hauled off by the police, after my dad waited out some very intimidating community confrontation without any backup. You cops definitely know how this is. For those of you who don't get the same weight of this that I do, this type of situation is incredibly uncommon for FBI agents, especially for senior execs. Anyway, what bad luck for the mugger to have an FBI agent arrest him immediately after committing the crime. If karma is real, it certainly was a B to this guy. Serves him right. I can assure you karma is real, as you have just received some. Didn't happen to me, but some dumb butts in my town got the brilliant idea to go around shooting people with an airsoft gun as they drove around. Turns out, one of the people they shot at was an off-duty cop. He drew his weapon, and was a fraction of a second away from shooting one of them right in the face. They were lucky that the cop saw the orange tip. I'm a police firearms officer in the UK, bit like SWAT in America. Me and a colleague were driving through a reasonably large town that we work in around midday. We were in civvies and an unmarked car. There had been loads of jewelry shop robberies recently, so we were going along checking everyone was okay. We pulled up and entered one of them to chat to some of the people we know. My colleague went out the back to check some CCTV when a rather large gentleman enters the shop with a long coat on. He hands the assistant a note that read, "I have a gun. Don't pee me off. I will shoot you. Give me all your jewels." That is how he spelt it. The assistant shrieked, which put matey boy off. Next thing he knew, he was face down on the floor with a Glock muzzle in the back of his neck. Never before have I seen a grown man cry as much as he did. Justice Frick face. All rise for the Honorable Justice Duck face. Disclaimer. I'm not a cop, it just happened to be good timing. So I worked at a buffet in a bad neighborhood, and occasionally they would get people who would dine and dash. One particularly busy lunch hour, I was at the window section and had just finished clearing up after a bus with my workmate. There are 3 sections in the buffet, which open close every 3 to 4 hours as to be able to rotate people on and off shifts, and 2 servers per section, so about 6 servers, 4 bus boys, hosts, bar staff, buffet staff running food and so on. There's a group of about 4 kids in the section farthest from the windows and front door where I am, near the bathrooms past the buffet. One of them hands the server in that section a debit card, and when she turns around to get the machine they try booking it for the door. Emphasis on try. Remember, it's a crowded restaurant and they got to go past 2 sections, the buffet and the front cash. Only 2 got to the door. Now you may think, okay, 2 out of 4 isn't bad, but there happened to be 2 cops with cars talking to a woman outside. I don't know what happened to her, but she had been talking to them upset for about an hour. We all chase the 2 thieves out the door, see the cops and shout that they didn't pay. One cop took off on foot, the other hopped in the car and tore after them. As well, a large black gentleman built like a football player had just come out of the grocery store next door. He dropped his groceries and took off after the little thieves as well. They came dragging them back by the ear and had to call their parents to pay for their meal. The parents were apologetic to us and paid for the meal. A couple of the fathers looked ready to tear their kids a new one. I honestly felt bad for the parents, but the method of capture was epic. I have an unmarked I drive both on and off duty. There are few things more satisfying than the look on some bag's face when I flick on the lights after he's been cutting in and out of traffic at 100 miles per hour. Of course, I can't write tickets, so I just yell at him and leave. I am not in Leo, but I was in line at the post office when somebody tried to cut in front of a plainclothes Leo. I am a police officer with City Police Department, and I'm telling you to get to the back of the line. That guy had the longest crawl in front of the withering gazes of a long line of citizens to get there. Assault creating fear. Whoever wrote that law must have a philosopher. Most people don't understand assault and battery. The guy didn't have to touch anything to be charged with assault. All he needed to do was act in a threatening manner. That's simple assault creating fear. I am friends with a guy whose father is an FBI SWAT handler. He told me this story once. He and his unit were dispatched to bring in a wanted felon and assist with a drug ring bust. His unit gears up and loads into an unmarked white van. Tinted windows, wearing full SWAT gear. They are parked a few blocks away from where the drug deal is going down, waiting to be called in. 2 men approach the vehicle and proceed to attempt to break in and steal it. My friend's father, who is in the passenger seat, throws his door open, knocking one of the guys down, gets out with his MP5 and points it at the guy, now on the ground. FBI mother, you're under arrest. Those 2 open up a can of whoop butt. This is a good cop story. I am 28, never in my life been pulled over. I drive a little fast, but then again I do live in NJ. I tried making a red light, being as if I didn't, it was going to be a rough stop. Cop pulls me over and instead of being a douche I hand him my paperwork, say good morning officer. He asks me, do I know why I pulled you over? And I say yes sir, I ran a red light, and informed him it wasn't my intention to, I just didn't want to slam on my brakes. 20 seconds later he returns and says he's not giving me a ticket because of my attitude and honesty, something he hasn't seen in 3 months. A lot of people hate cops, I'm sure there are some bad eggs, but I respect cops 110%. Any man woman willing to risk like every day for, in my opinion, way too low pay for life risking. All respect given. Show your respect, and more likely than not, you will receive it in kind. Well done. When I was a kid, my sister and I were riding home with my dad in his pickup. Some guy was tailgating us, honking and swerving from side to side trying to get around. When my dad got to a stop sign, he waved the guy around. Instead, the guy got out of his car and came towards us. My dad got out and the guy started yelling, and my dad was like, "You don't want to do this, buddy." The guy took a swing and my dad sidestepped him and in a flash had him spun around with his arm behind his back in a crazy wrist lock. The guy was howling like a puppy as my dad walked him back to his car and shoved him in and told him to go home. A couple of weeks later, the guy was at a block party telling our neighbors about the maniac in the old red Ford. They told him, "You're lucky that's all that happened. That guy is known to carry a gun. That's what's wrong with this country. Maniacs like that running around with guns while he is on highway patrol." The guy came over to my dad and me and apologized for his behavior. I gotta say, it's exactly things like these that make me want to go into law enforcement. I'm currently studying in college, but I plan one day to get into the FBI. At least that's my goal. I'll probably do police work to get ready for it. Putting dumb shits in jail who think they can get away with this kind of thing just because there is no marked car present. Those are the best stories to hear. Keep up the good work in law enforcement, since the only thing we hear about these days are the bad or rotten cop stories. This is nice to see. I'll be honest, if you want to go federal, go military first. Pick a job that gets you a security clearance. It's what I should have done, but didn't. The cop in this story wasn't off duty, but the unsuspecting butthole got quite a shock. My wife was sitting at a red light, next to the parking lot at our local shopping mall, with a police cruiser sitting in the lane next to her. As they're stopped, a guy in the parking lot wins back and decks the woman he's with. My wife says she'll never forget the look on the guy's face when the cruiser lit up. The cop was over the curb, out of his car, and had the guy on the ground before the light even turned green. Random bad story of justice my brother distributed. A man was drinking and beating his girlfriend. My family was on the porch just enjoying the night. We hear the slaps and screams and run out to the scene that is now in the middle of the street. My brother tell Hein to knock it off. This guy starts throwing full tall boys at us. My brother is a baseball and basketball player, so he caught one before it exploded and threw it back at the guy and hit him. We all took off running toward him, and about halfway there he pulls a gun and starts throwing it around. My brother isn't a fighter and has never fought before, but his balls became steel and he ran as fast as he could at the guy and jump kicked him. The guy went flying. The gun flew to God's nowhere. My brother punched the guy out into sleep like Anderson Silva and took my shoelace and used it to cuff the dude. He got arrested and my brother got handshakes. Was so sure of a sick ending when you mentioned the shoelace. Strangled idiot would probably be a bit over the top. Good work, your brother. It was my first driven ig lesson where I actually got to go somewhere instead of dicking around in the parking lot. Butthole swerves in front of MW, runs a red light, and hits a car in front of me. The car he hit turned the sirens on. Never laughed harder in my life. I wish there were more cops out there like you. I see people getting away with the craziest crap, mostly involving driving, on a daily basis. But I get pulled over the second my light bulb on my turn signal goes out. When I worked night shift, I saw so many deputies using their lights and sirens just because they don't feel like waiting at a red light. Even some that didn't bother to use their lights and sirens and caused accidents. The instant justice thing is one of the coolest feelings ever. I saw it happening in, at least, a couple of occasions in the subway in New York City. At some point in the early 2000s, the subway was just crawling with undercover cops. In an occasion, the skangbanger is sitting in a bench smoking, not allowed, throwing garbage in the floor and being loud and obnoxious. A short dude with a backpack, a silly goatee and layered shirts walking by the guy casually pull his badge out his shirt, makes him pick up all the garbage, put the cigarette out and walk him out the subway. In another occasion, I was waiting for the train, and all of a sudden 3 undercover dudes in the platform just pop their badges and start a full-on foot chase. Not sure what triggered. I was left there shocked that I was surrounded by cops the whole time. I've always had respect for the job of being a cop, although cops themselves can be dongs, saviors, or something in between. I mean, you basically offer to handle all of the fricked up situations that these crazy monkey things create. The worst of the worst. You clean it up. That's your job. I love watching cops or bait car. When you start to look at the elements of society getting arrested, you realize that some people are little more than animals that need to be caged. And I'm a liberal. I detest the war on drugs, the beating of protesters, and all of the other things that fellow Redditors hate police for. In my own way, I guess I'm trying to say thank you. I'm happy that our society values order enough to cage the animals that perpetrate crimes like these. Even if I fear the cops dragging me away, I'm mostly a nice guy, but I used to tangle with drugs and parties. Keep up the good work. Man, not only did he try to cut, but he decided to bash someone's car for it. What the effing F, seriously. So glad you were there for that. I've seen buttholes pull this same crap before, but I'm a lover not a fighter. So the best I can muster is a grunt of gawat and butthole from the safety of the inside of my car, while wishing that there is such a thing as karma and that it somehow works. All these stories bring one to mind that I heard from my high school history teacher. His son was Spec Ops Marines. He just got back from a flight, and as he was walking to his car, he was confronted by two would-be muggers. Short story shorter, he was unarmed, so he broke their arms and held them until the police arrived. Thank you for providing me with evidence that there are good cops out there. My town has a terribly overfunded and power-mad police force. We have 2-3 riot-proof mobile command centers that are slightly bigger than fire trucks and a freaking helicopter. Mind you, this is in an upper middle class suburb. Like I said, some of the cops are on terrible power trips. My 13-year-old brother was stopped and searched for running down the street with his friend. My 17-year-old brother had 3 cruisers called in after some lunatic accused him of undoing a link in a fence. I was going home on leave a year ago and was just leaving base. I looked over to my right. I was in the passenger seat and see a lady talking on her cell phone while driving. I motion for her to put the phone down and she just waves back. I reach back to my backpack full of clothes and retrieve my beret, use AF security forces, and put it on. Then turn back to her and motion for her to put the phone down again. This time she makes a no face, smiles sheepishly, and puts it down. She wasn't in butthole, but me and my buddy got a good laugh out of it, and I made the road a little safer. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.